The day at the Pig family's house began peacefully. Mummy Pig was baking a pie, Daddy Pig was reading his newspaper, and Peppa and George were playing with their building blocks. They were building a tall, colourful tower. But as soon as George placed the last block on top, the tower wobbled and collapsed. One of the blocks rolled under the cabinet. Peppa bent down to reach for it. It was dark beneath, but she felt something soft, slightly wet. When she pulled her hoof back, a thin, sticky strand clung to her skin. It glistened faintly and moved, stretching like rubber. "Ew, what a weird thing," she said, but the strand had already slipped back into the shadow. That evening, Mummy Pig noticed something strange. The children were unusually quiet. Peppa didn't talk, neither did George. They simply sat at the table, staring at each other without blinking. When Mummy brought dinner, they both smiled. Perfectly identical smiles. "Sweeties, is everything all right?" she asked. "Yes, Mummy," they answered at the same time, with the same voice. That night, Daddy Pig woke to faint whispering. The voices came from the children's room. He crept to the door and listened. "One," whispered Peppa's voice. "We," replied George. "One. We. One." He pushed the door open. The children were standing in the middle of the room, holding hooves. Between them shimmered a thin, transparent film, like light reflecting on air. "Kids?" They turned to him simultaneously. Their pupils moved in perfect sync. "We're fine, Daddy," they said in unison. He took a step back. The air around them seemed to ripple, as if heated. The next morning, Peppa and George looked tired. They ate slowly, their eyes never leaving each other. When Peppa lifted her spoon, George mirrored her movement, exactly at the same rhythm. Even their breathing matched. Mummy thought they were just overplaying and sent them to rest. But later, when she peeked into their room, both beds were empty. The toys were neatly lined up across the floor, a perfect straight line. In the middle of the room were two hoofprints touching. That evening, Daddy heard the sounds again, a faint rustling, like something dragging softly across the floor. He opened the door to the children's room. The light flickered, the air felt heavy, almost like mist. Peppa was standing in the corner. George was beside her. They were still holding hooves, but now their skin seemed fused. Daddy froze. There was no line separating one from the other. Where Peppa ended and George began was impossible to tell. "What are you doing?" he whispered. They looked at him with one shared gaze, identical, cold. "We are together," they said. Their bodies trembled. Thin threads stretched from their backs, connecting their shoulders and sides. Their faces began to shift, melting together like wax figures under heat. One mouth, two pairs of eyes, one voice. "We don't need to speak anymore," the creatures said, both voices echoing as one. "We understand without words." Daddy stepped back, but behind him came a soft step. Mummy was standing in the doorway. She saw it too, but said nothing. The night passed in silence. The house felt lifeless. No steps, no sounds. In the morning, Daddy woke to the sound of laughter. He ran to the kitchen and froze. Peppa and George were sitting at the table just like always. They laughed, ate porridge and smiled, but their voices were identical, their gestures the same, their eyes the same, everything mirrored. Mummy quietly set down the cups and said nothing. Daddy sat opposite them. For a long moment, no one moved. "Did you sleep well?" he finally asked. "Yes," they replied together, eyes unblinking. He wanted to say more, but then noticed their hooves on the table. They were intertwined. The skin had merged, seamless, like one continuous surface. That night, Mummy heard faint humming. She stepped into the hallway and froze. Peppa and George stood in the doorway, their bodies joined into a single tall shape, slowly breathing. Their heads tilted slightly to the same side, The same smile curved across both faces. They whispered, "We are one now." And the house fell silent again. The next morning, the children's room was empty. Only a mirror lay on the floor. In the reflection stood two figures. But when Mummy came closer, she realized it wasn't two, it was one. Peppa Pig, the second window. For as long as anyone could remember, Peppa's bedroom had only one window. Everyone knew this fact. Peppa herself, Mummy Pig, Daddy Pig, and little George. It offered a familiar everyday view of their yard, the swings, the flower bed. Everything was perfectly ordinary. But one morning at dawn, Peppa awoke to a sudden, bone-chilling cold. She yawned sleepily, stretched, sat up on her mattress, and instantly froze in terror. On the opposite wall, a window had appeared. Another one. It had never been there before. Jumping down to the floor, the little pig cautiously approached the mysterious opening. It was narrower and more elongated compared to her usual window. The frame looked decrepit and blackened, and the glass was so cloudy it seemed covered in a years-old layer of grime. On the other side lay a forest. No familiar street or beloved lawn, just a thicket. Tall, lifeless grey trunks, a pale sky, and thick fog slithering between the trees. Peppa backed away in fright. She glanced out her normal glass. Everything was fine there. The lawn was in place, and George was peacefully playing with his toy dinosaur. Everything was exactly as it should be. But as soon as she turned back to the second window, the gloomy forest loomed before her again. Moreover, she had a persistent feeling as if someone was hiding in the shadows of the trees, watching her closely. "Mummy!" she screamed frantically. Mummy Pig rushed into the nursery. "Yes, Peppa, I have a window." "Well, of course you have a window." Mummy smiled gently. "No, not that one. Another one. And there's a forest." Mummy Pig looked where her daughter's trembling hand was pointing. "There is just a bare wall there, sweetie," she said. "You must have had a bad dream. Try to go back to sleep." She left, leaving Peppa all alone. But the frightening portal didn't disappear. All day long, the girl tried to push away thoughts of it. She played with her brother, drew pictures. However, upon returning to her bedroom towards the evening, she noticed with horror that the window had slid lower down the wall, now almost at her eye level. The landscape behind the glass hadn't changed, except the fog had grown denser, and a dark silhouette now clearly loomed among the trunks, motionless, with an indistinguishable face. Peppa tightly pulled the curtains shut and huddled in her bed. In the middle of the night, her eyes suddenly flew open. The curtain had been pushed aside. A deathly pale light poured from the opening, and Peppa saw that the mysterious figure had moved right up to the glass. The creature didn't move, but now its face could be seen. It looked like her own, but terrifyingly distorted. Unnaturally wide eyes and a creepy thin smirk. Peppa let out a piercing shriek. Mummy ran in, the switch clicked, and the room was flooded with light. The window vanished. "You had a nightmare again, Sunshine?" Mummy Pig sighed. "Everything is fine." But Peppa didn't believe her. The next morning, the window returned, only this time on a different wall. From then on, it began changing its position daily, sometimes hiding behind the bunk bed, sometimes appearing near the door. The forest remained unchanged, and the dark guest kept creeping closer. Driven to despair, Peppa left a note on the windowsill. "Who are you?" And the very next morning, she found an answer scratched into the glass, but from the inside of the room. "You look out the window, but I'm already inside." That day, Peppa refused to go to school. She huddled in the corner by her normal, safe window, trying to sit and breathe as quietly as possible. Suddenly, a faint rustle sounded behind her. The curtain moved on its own. The girl didn't even turn around. Now, this cursed window is in her room constantly, and no one but her notices it. Not Mummy, not Daddy, not even George, and sometimes, at night, someone knocks on the glass.